Welcome to the Dreamlands. We're back with the Deserts of Kharak 2 versus 2 tournament. This is going to be match 3 from round 1. And as usual, I am joined by Majiir Pack 2 as my co-caster.
Hey everybody.
And the interesting thing about this is Majiir is actually going to be present in this matchup, so it should be pretty cool to get his insight from his team's perspective. So he's going to be casting from the perspective of Team 1, which is Majiir Pack 2 and Payday. And I'm going to be casting from the perspective of Team 2, which is going to be Tren and Iain, BBI Iain. So this, I think, should be a really, really damn good matchup, and I'm expecting a lot of really cool action. Game 1 is going to be on Kalash Valley, so I'm just going to load into the replay.
This is a map that we see a lot more in 3v3 because it's one of the only two 3v3 maps. So it's interesting in the 2v2 Cup to see this played a little bit since it was in the rotation.
I was just thinking about that, actually. I rarely see this played 2 versus 2, actually, and it's a pretty darn cool map. So I'll let you know when I'm paused at 55, just loading into the replay currently. And I've also never had the opportunity to see or cast Payday, so I really don't know what to expect.
He's played in a number of the Artifact Cups recently, and I still have 1 or 2 replays from his first Artifact Cup that I'm saving for some time, so maybe we can cast those another time too.
Hey, yeah, that would be awesome. All right, so I'm paused at 29:55.
Okay, I am as well, so we'll count down 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, as usual, I will introduce Team 2, and Majiir will introduce Team 1, and then we will jump into the action. So spawning on the south side of Kalash Valley, we have got Team 2, which is going to be BBI Iain, Blackbird Interactive's very own community manager. So I want to give a big shout out to him for participating in these tournaments. He is a player that I have seen improve drastically in the short time that he's been playing. So that's really, really cool to see. And he is an all-around awesome guy and a fantastic community manager. So big shout out to Iain. And his partner, his teammate spawning to his left, is a player that everyone that follows Deserts of Kharak should be quite familiar with. We have got Tren, a top tier player, and he will be playing as the Soban, so a Coalition and Soban team.
And on the north side, we have, I guess it's still the north, I'm not really sure which side it is, but we'll call it the north. You called that one the south. We have in the red fearsome Coalition carrier Payday, who, as we were talking about, is a relatively new player. He's been around for a few months, but has shown tremendous growth in the short time that he's played with us. So he was a great pick for this team. And his partner in the Knev carrier may not be the most skilled Deserts of Kharak player, but definitely the most handsome. It is Majiir Pack 2, yours truly.
Oh, you're too modest, my friend. Too modest indeed.
As always.
All right, so what have we got going on the map? It looks like Tren is long-hauling resources from his closest expansion site. He's saturated his main. Iain has also saturated his main. However, he's not doing any long-haul resourcing at the moment. There is an LAV on the field now from Iain, so he's gone for the LAV tech, which is pretty interesting to see. Likewise, Tren has gone for LAVs as well, so just a couple of LAVs. Looks like just going out to get some scouting. Nothing, not committing to any major attack with this unit. Now he's going to start popping off a few shots at this base runner. That's not really going to do any decisive damage. And Iain's base runner is positioned directly over top of the mid artifact. I really, really like this. I just want to mention that really quickly. I like when players go for artifacts that are at the middle or further spawn point early in the game, because if they're able to secure those and take an advantage in the early game and get some map control, that makes it a lot easier for them to get the artifact that's closest to their spawn.
Yeah, and let me tell you, when I was playing this game, I knew, the only thing I really knew to expect was that Iain was going to have a base runner out early, because in the games that I've played that are 2v2 or 3v3 with Iain, he seems to do this more than any other player. He always has a base runner out up front, quickly follows it up with LAVs to defend or AAVs to defend. As we're seeing now coming out in the field, there are several AAVs. Looks like we got 3 now coming out from Iain to fight off my sand skimmers here. But yeah, he loves getting that early base runner out, and he doesn't necessarily go for an artifact victory or use that artifact to win the game, but he always uses it to apply pressure early.
And it's a pretty good play. I like it. Followed up with these AAVs, which do have an armor upgrade. So really, really nice timing by Iain on the upgrades, timing those so that they hit right when his units are pushing out. I like to see that. And these 3 AAVs are going to push back and kind of prevent you guys from applying any significant amount of pressure. However, that being said, Majiir does have a bunch of skimmers, 6 skimmers now, that have caught this base runner out, and Majiir, that's going to force Iain to bring at least 1, 2 now of his AAVs back to protect this base runner.
It is going to force him to bring those AAVs, but force might be the wrong word there. It's more like an opportunity. As we can see, he's cleaning up my sand skimmers, cleaned up my blast drone, and my fatal error here was forgetting that there is this obstacle on Kalash Teeth by that resource point that my sand skimmers are now passing by, so that, and where the AAVs are driving by now, it creates this little choke point that's hard to see.
Yeah, very true. And that's going to force your units to go around. Sometimes units get stuck there, so that is definitely something to watch out for. Now, it looks like Iain is probably going to get this. Or is he, though? I don't know. There's like a bunch of LAVs coming in from Payday, and it looks like they're going to be able to run right by those AAVs of Iain's, and they are definitely going to snipe that base runner. There it goes. Really, really nice play from Payday there.
Yeah, that was, and a lot of damage that was put on early by those sand skimmers did cause that base runner to go down when Payday was able to finish that off. I just want to quickly point out some of the tech choices here. On my end, I have just now finished railgun fabrication, and you can see that I have a couple of assault ships out, but these are really the wrong tools to be fighting AAVs. And so the railguns coming out will help, but those need to get into the production queues in order to do any good. And Payday has not finished railgun fabrication yet. So with several AAVs, 2 by Payday's resources, 2 by my central resources, another 2 coming up by my carrier, you can see where Tren and Iain are starting to close the pincer here. Our resourcing is really suffering, and even though we do have a base runner out in the field holding an artifact, it's about to be blown up by a couple of AAVs. So map control is firmly in the hands of Tren and Iain's team. And it really comes down to this AAV choice and the fact that we were not able to counter it.
Yeah, that's true, and you guys are in actually a lot of trouble right now. I like the split on Iain's AAV, sending 2 over to your main, and then 2 coming through mid, and then another 2 coming over along the left side of the map, and then reinforcing the middle position. And Tren earlier was able to use his AAVs and LAVs to take down a support cruiser from Payday, so that was a massive, massive blow. Does Tren have any upgrades on his AAVs? He does. He has 2 armor upgrades. Iain as well has 2 armor upgrades right now. So these AAVs, with that level of armor upgrades, they're going to be a really, really difficult thing for you guys to take out.
Absolutely. And even if we can do some damage to the ships, which I will be able to do now that I have some assault railguns coming out and I did get some distance on those AAVs, it doesn't matter as much as you'd think because there are now railguns coming across the field. And what Iain and Tren can do, because they're playing as Coalition and Soban, is they can really just play as if they're one faction and one player. They don't have to worry about counters from a Gaussian faction. They can just both build AAVs and then both build railguns or both build LAVs and overwhelm whatever units we have with exactly the right counter. Now, granted, they don't get the Gaussian counters available to them, but as we see, they don't really need them, and even though their AAVs are being cleaned up, they still have map control over the center, so Payday and I are not able to go in and get artifacts, we're not able to deny them resourcing, and so they really are able to just sort of take their time on their side of the map while they get in position.
That's a very, very good point. And I just want to point out that you were able to clean up all of Iain's AAVs, so that was a pretty nice counterattack by you. But Tren still has this resourcing location of Payday's locked down with some really, really nice positioning. A couple of railguns up on the high dune here, and then some AAVs with their significant armor and hit point pool bringing up the front, and he's continuing to reinforce his railguns here. I had a bit of a weird issue where my camera, as I was panning, just totally went out of bounds on the map. So I do apologize for that. The dune kind of like bounced my camera right out into like the blackness of space, which is kind of strange. A couple of railguns trading blows with these AAVs. That's going to force them back, but some nice micro from Tren, just bringing them back under the cover of his railguns, which have a dominant and superior position on this high ground here.
Tren might not have even been aware of it, but a moment ago, those AAVs that he had up on that hill and those railguns were completely hidden from Payday's vision. Payday moved his railguns forward seemingly by accident and then realized that they were there. Maybe he had been keeping track of them before, but they certainly weren't within vision and weren't showing any sensor pings before. And I think the railguns are still a little bit invisible. Over on the other side of the map, I'm skirmishing a little bit here with the forces of Iain. Iain has some railguns out, and I believe I only have assault railguns on the field, maybe one heavy railgun, so I'm a little bit outmatched and pulling back now as I'm building more heavy railguns in order to try and engage long range there.
Yeah, and Iain has transitioned really nicely into kind of like what I like to call a Greppy style blunt force macro play, where he just masses huge numbers of railguns and AAVs and just uses the brute force of those very, very powerful units in high numbers to kind of push forward. He does have a support cruiser on the field, so he's mining from 2 resource locations. And Tren also has a support cruiser on the field, and I just want to point something out that's really cool that he's done. He sent his support cruiser to the furthest resource location and begun mining there, while continuing to long haul resources from the closer site. And that's a move that I do like to see. If a player is not able to go full in on a 3-base economy, go ahead and go for a 2.5 base instead of putting your support cruiser at your main and moving your carrier out, which may be kind of a move that most players, myself included, are inclined to do. But that's just a nice little touch. It's going to give him a slight edge in terms of economy. Tren also does have missile batteries on the field, which is nice to see, just in kind of as a precautionary measure against any air tech switch.
Yeah, because of the resource positioning on this map, there's not really an obvious second or third expansion. You get to kind of choose what order you do it in, and they're both roughly equidistant to the carrier. I wanted to highlight quickly, there was a fight between me and Iain on the, I guess it would be right side of the map, if I have that right. And a number of Iain ships were damaged by that because I did get in close with some assault ships, and those delivered some AoE damage to some of the railguns and AAVs. But all told, I misjudged the number of ships that were there, and so my units got completely cleaned up, and this Greppy blob is still there. These blobs can be really difficult to fight, especially if you're using conventional tools like AAVs or assault ships and railguns, sand skimmers, LAVs. Those are all really easily countered by one of the 2 units in that blob. But things that beat this blob are air, indirect fire, so artillery or missiles from a carrier, or other kinds of AoE damage units. So right now I have a wing of sand skimmers that are just driving past them and now running away because it's not going to be a good idea to fight with them. But there are certainly tools to deal with these. Unfortunately, I don't have any of them right now other than my carrier, which is moving forward with some missile power.
And your ally Payday is in a huge amount of trouble right now. He was trying to push forward with his carrier. He does have a bit of power, enough to make the carrier pretty threatening, but he walked right into a massive field of crossfire where he was basically surrounded by like positions of railguns from Tren in 3 different locations. Now the carrier is down to like a quarter health, maybe a little bit less, and he is having to go into full retreat mode, getting some support cruisers on the field to desperately try and get his carrier's health back up. But he is not looking in a good spot. His carrier is even smoking and flying through the air right now. So, yeah, he's I would say, unless he can pull something crazy out, he is minutes away from going down.
Yeah, he's very vulnerable to being overrun right now. He has a support cruiser heading over to his carrier, which is nice, and he does have a few strike fighters, but unfortunately for Payday, and for me by association, Tren has a couple of missile batteries with his group there, and Payday is not really microing his fighters away from those missile batteries enough to keep them away from fire. My sand skimmer blob over on the other side of the map was trying to tangle a little bit with the railguns. It did take out a few railguns of Iain. Unfortunately, a lot of the AAVs are also cleaning up sand skimmers there, and my carrier was able to push off some units from the far expansion for Iain, but Iain is still on 3 bases on resources, so he's certainly not hurting there. And meanwhile, on the other side of the map, Tren has really overrun all of Payday's resourcing and is about to overrun mine. So For me, and certainly for Payday, this is feeling like a game that's quickly going to be over.
Yeah, sadly, you guys were just never able to get a footing after that mass AAV push, which admittedly can be very, very difficult to hold, even if you're prepared for it. AAVs are just so damn tanky that once they get a few of them into your resourcing line, it can be so damaging and so hard to come back from. And that's exactly what we saw here. Now that you guys have lost pretty much all your resourcing, I feel like it's just a matter of time. So valiantly played. But I think, how do you think you guys could have played differently once you spotted the AAVs in order to kind of mitigate the amount of damage?
Well, early game, there was a lot of fighting in the middle with sand skimmers and LAVs. Nobody went for a hard AAV rush. So just so there's no confusion, this wasn't an AAV rush. This was an AAV follow-up by Tren and Iain. So we could have railgun rushed. If our first tech had been railguns for one of us or for both of us, that certainly would have helped us, and we would have had that counter ready before they even had it on the field for us to spot. Alternatively, once we saw them, we could have prioritized that railgun rush and maybe tried and focused our units together at the same point. We weren't really communicating very much at that point in the game, but maybe we could have tried to focus down one of those AAV groups just to protect one of our resourcing areas and then try and help the other player after that. But ultimately, I think it really came down to the tech choice and the fact that we weren't terribly coordinated. In particular, my choice to go for assault ships really didn't do anything useful at any point in the game. And so while the AAVs from Payday were useful, it probably would have been much better if I had just gone straight for railguns.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree that assault ship tech choice is a pretty big resource sink. If you're not going to follow that distinct tech path, like assault ships into siege cruisers and whatnot, or directly into air even. So making kind of one tech choice and then having to switch gears and make a different tech choice to follow up what your opponent is doing can be pretty damaging to your economy in the early game.
Yeah,
All right,
and truthfully,
so
I wish I could tell you why I had gone for assault ships. I don't remember. All I know is that watching this replay, both Payday and I finished up railgun tech as we had AAVs completely overrunning our resource spot. So
oh yeah,
we were quite late on that, and that's a lesson that we're definitely going to remember in the future.
Nice. That is unfortunate. So both carriers went down, and that is going to be a win for Iain and Tren, taking the first game from match 3. Now I'm just going to load up game 2, and this time I'm going to be from Tren's viewpoint, and it's going to be on Titan Passage once again.
Yeah, so this is a map that I think we saw quite a bit in this tournament, and we didn't see it very much in a lot of the 1v1 tournaments because it had this bug where on one side of the map, there's this large cliff, this large hill that goes into a valley, and your units can sometimes get off the edge and end up falling down into that valley, and you're just going to permanently lose them. There's no way for them to climb back up. There's no way to retire the units. There's no way to destroy the units once they get down there. So that can really be a problem if like a bunch of your resource collectors get stuck down there, or a cruiser or your carrier or something like that. At one point, Sinistro did bring back this map into the main cup rotation. So we have it again for 1v1, and we've been seeing a little more there, and we have it for 2v2. So this is one of my favorite maps. So I hope we see it a lot more, and I was definitely excited to play it in this game.
Absolutely. So I am in at 29:55.
I am as well, so we'll start in 3, 2, 1, go.
We're a go, and I will, as usual, introduce Team 2, and Majiir will introduce Team 1. So spawning on the south side of Titan Passage, it is going to be Tren, once again playing as the Soban, and his ally, once again playing as the Coalition. It is going to be BBI Iain.
On the north side, it is going to be Payday as the Coalition. It kind of looks like a rust-colored carrier on this map, I guess, because of the lighting. I'm not really sure what Payday's colors are, so I'm going to have to go back and look sometimes. And also a bit rust-colored in the Knef carrier, it is DOK's most handsome player, Majiir Pack 2.
Right on. And now this is a map that I feel like really favors a macro playstyle because it is pretty damn big. The spaces are pretty wide open, and there's a very long travel distance. I would say this is probably one of the bigger maps in the pool.
It's good for macro in the sense that it's large. It's bad for macro in the sense that your resource expansions are in a line. It's very unlike Kalash, where you can kind of maintain control over a smaller zone and hold all your resource points. In this one, you have to really extend almost all the way into the center of the map to get to your third expansion. And even if you move your carrier up, you're going to be vulnerable one way or the other. And the 2v2 arrangement kind of changes this up a little bit because your rear side can be protected a little bit by your ally, but it's still a map where you have to maintain a lot of control in order to really cover all three bases.
Yeah, that is a very, very good point. You often see on this map players, at least in my experience, I've seen players go for support cruiser first pretty safely, and you can take your first expansion site with relative safety. It's like really, really close by. But again, as Majiir mentioned, your second expansion site, so your third mining location, is pretty far away and also takes you really close to the opponent's extraction zone. So that makes for a pretty interesting style of map play. Now, looking at the tech choices, it looks like Tren is long hauling resources. He is going for AAVs. He's got one in production, and he's also getting the carrier production upgrade really, really early. So that's pretty interesting. This implies to me that he's going to go for a pretty strong push very, very soon. Once again, it's AAVs for Iain. He does have a single armor upgrade, and no upgrades yet for Tren, as he's going for the carrier production. So we've got a couple of AAVs moving out onto the map, and both players long hauling. Pretty standard stuff thus far.
Yeah, on the other side of the map, both me and Payday have not really made a tech choice yet. Neither of us have researched railguns or assault ships or AAVs, depending on which player. Both of us are pumping out sand skimmers or LAVs, depending on our faction. And it looks like we've got a turret coming up now for Iain, which is going to face off some of Payday's LAVs here. I didn't know that this had gone up. I wasn't paying attention at the time. Looks like the turret will go down, but not without doing a little bit of damage to those LAVs. So really sort of a strikecraft open for us, hoping to get a little bit more map control early, trying to capitalize on a little bit with a base runner from me, and trying to get in to the resourcing of Tren and Iain.
Yeah, we do have those LAVs from Payday coming around and trying to focus down this base runner, and it is going to be damn close, but I don't think close enough. The base runner is going to make the drop off, so Iain and Tren are able to take a 1-0 lead, and those AAVs from Tren arrive just in time, right on the back of Iain's artifact drop. So his base runner is going to live, and these LAVs from Payday are going to get pushed off by these AAVs, which do now have an armor upgrade. So pretty dangerous stuff, and there's 4 AAVs coming along the left side of the map.
Enemy contact on sensors.
Yeah, those are going to push away my sand skimmers, and they did blow up a few of those and also take out a blast drone that I had destined for Iain's resourcing. Currently, now that I can really see the entire map and I can see vision, I can see that my move to go up into Tren's resourcing is a good move, because they were almost undefended by any AAVs, and I wish I'd gone there sooner because it was a good opportunity to take out these salvagers. But now that those AAVs are out, my window is down to like 5 seconds to really do any damage, and I didn't get a blast drone into those salvagers in time. So vision is really everything, and in this case, as the Knef, I don't really have any good tools to scout with, and so I was relying on Payday for that, and unfortunately I didn't communicate with him, so I didn't tell him, hey, you know, send out a UAV or something like that.
Looks like you are going to be able to pick up Iain's base runner, so that's pretty nice. I mean, you weren't able to do any economic damage to speak of, but grabbing that base runner is going to put a little bit of pressure off of you guys. You're not going to have to worry about that thing taking artifacts uncontested, but I feel like you have bigger things to worry about with, once again, these AAVs right up into your production lines almost.
Yep, and as I was taking out the base runner from Iain and Tren were taking out the support cruiser and resource expansion of Payday. So we really did suffer much greater damage there, and now I have since researched railgun tech, and I'm not sure exactly where my railguns are now. Payday still working on railgun tech, and these AVs are getting in here, and we're trying to do some damage, but they've really been able to do so much economic damage at this point that even though Tren is still just remote mining from one expansion. Even though Iain is only just getting a support cruiser onto an expansion, they really have the vastly better economy at this point, and they're able to counter the units that we have out in the field, that we get out in the field, as we see my production cruiser trying to pop out some railguns to deal with these AAVs, and they just get immediately chewed up because they're too close.
Yeah, that was unfortunate that that one assault railgun just kind of popped out right in the middle of all of these AAVs, which are getting rank fearsomely quickly, and that's going to make them terrifyingly good. You want to keep your production cruiser the hell away from this, if at all possible. It looks like you're bleeding salvagers in a big way now, and as you mentioned before, Payday suffered a really big hit to his economy, and for some reason he now has a support cruiser charging towards these AAVs, which is not something you want to do. Perhaps that was just a bad rally point.
That's my assumption. On the other side of the map, I'm trying to do a little bit of economic damage to Iain, and it's working a little bit. I did push him off of his expansion, did a little bit of damage to the support cruiser, not enough to really kill it or threaten it. And so now Iain and Tren do have to have AAVs defending at home in order to deal with those sand skimmers. So we'll see what I can do with those going forward. This is actually something, and I told Iain and Tren this after the game, I wasn't expecting to be able to do any damage here, because there were so many AAVs out on the field. I thought, man, any sand skimmers that I have are just dead. I might as well throw them away and get something for it. So it was really surprising to me that I was able to push off some salvagers from the expansion, now actually going in and killing some salvagers while some of these AAVs are sitting there. So it looks like as much as we felt overwhelmed by the AAVs, they felt a little bit overwhelmed by kind of the command and control problem of trying to organize all these AAVs, and didn't get any back home to defend.
Yeah, excellent move. I gotta commend you on that. Able to do some economic damage, as well as grab an artifact on the back of that. So that's going to give you some really useful power on your carrier, which will be invaluable in fending off these AAVs. Now that you've got a couple of assault railguns on the field too, you're starting to look into a pretty decent position here. Recovering slowly, but recovering nonetheless. You did lose a production cruiser, I noticed, which is really unfortunate. That combined with the salvagers that you lost is putting you pretty far behind. However, with railguns on the field now, you guys should be able to balance out a little bit.
It does help, but the real story, I think, is told on the units lost tab. We can see that there's a gulf of about 3,000 or 4,000 CUs between each of Tren and Iain and me and Payday. So really a total of about 7,000 CUs lost more on my team with Payday than with Tren and Iain. And I'm really leading the losses there, both in CUs and RUs. That combined with the fact that I currently have 4 salvagers, Payday currently has 8 salvagers. Iain also has only 8 or 9 salvagers, but he also has a support cruiser out on the field there, and it looks like Tren is gearing up to be on a 3-base economy. So yeah, the railguns are coming out, but there's only a few of them. There's not very many that I can build, and I don't have enough to really hold these high ground dunes protecting my second expansion, because the AAVs can kind of just run up the dune or flirt on top of the lip of the dune, and then just sort of roam over and shoot at close range. So I'm working on trying to push out there with the carrier, using my production cruiser back home to collect resources, but even though I can push off the threat for now, it's going to be a long-standing threat for a while, especially given the sort of buildup of forces that we see on Tren's side.
Yeah, and there is starting to become an overwhelming economic disparity in favor of Team 2 here. Tren and Iain both mining off of 3 resource locations, both players with double support cruisers on the field, so full efficiency mining from all 3 spots, and you guys are in a desperate position indeed. It looks like you do have a window of respite here where you're able to at least get your footing somewhat, but it's definitely going to be an uphill struggle from here on in. We do have some strike fighters in the hangar from Iain. What do we have from Tren? It looks like he is just continuing on with mass railgun. Not surprising considering the faction that he's playing. It looks like he has full armor upgrades as well as the Magfield accelerator upgrade, which makes these Soban railguns very dangerous indeed. With the marked target ability, they're able to really focus and put down carriers terrifyingly quickly, actually.
And it's worth noting that with the with the resource disparity here, there's also a tech disparity. So currently, Payday, as the coalition player on our team, doesn't have AAV fabrication. He has railgun fabrication, which is certainly useful to what we need to fight the AAVs, and I have railgun fabrication, but I don't have missile ship fabrication. I don't have assault ship fabrication, so I don't have fighters. Payday doesn't have fighters. We have just really two unit types. We have strikecraft and we have railguns. So yeah, the railguns are going to be great against AAVs, but there are railguns that can counter them. And unless we can get strikecraft back into the railgun line, there's not going to be much we can do about it. I don't have any strikecraft because I lost them all trying to raid Iain's resources to some effect. And Payday does have some strikecraft, which are pathing around the AAVs towards the railguns of Tren, which is a great move, I think. And Tren's pulling back those railguns to try and slow them down. I'm hoping there's going to be some damage done, but given that there's missile batteries in there and some other strikecraft, few really big missile battery hits there, and the rest of those units really cleaned up. So yeah, you can see why now it's really just railguns versus everything else, including aircraft, which are the single best counter to railguns, I would say. So the resource disparity throughout a game can manifest in more than just units. It can manifest in float. Right now, I have more than 3,000 CUs floated because I just don't have the production to even use those resources very effectively, and I believe Payday also has quite a bit of resource float. So it's really interesting to see what economic damage can do.
Yeah, absolutely. It can spiral in so many ways. A couple of missile shots coming out from your carrier, a valiant attempt, but I mean, there is strike fighters in the air, they're launching missiles into your carrier. There is just a ridiculous amount of AAVs and railguns. Like, again, with this Greppy style blob here, both players just kind of massing this blunt force playstyle with huge numbers of railguns and AAVs as well. And now strike fighters. Wow, that's actually a ton of strike fighters here. Are those all Iain's? Looks like they are. So a ton of strike fighters coming out from Iain behind his AAVs, which is a pretty cool choice. I do like that. AAVs into strike fighters. And the mass railguns coming in from Tren. Payday's carrier is on fire once again, so I'm kind of having a flashback from last game at this point.
We were as well, and this time it's worth noting the AAVs came sooner, so there was less of an opportunity to really counter them. Neither of us went for AAVs or assault ships or anything like that on our tech tree, so we had a little bit more flexibility there, but we did spend a lot of our resources early on strikecraft. And while that was nice, so, you know, we had a little bit of skirmishing in the beginning. We did take out a base runner. It didn't really help. The base runner still captured the artifact. We didn't really do any real economic damage. So the spending on strikecraft didn't really pay off. And again, we were just delayed on getting that railgun tech out. I imagine the game would have been very different if early we just had 4 railguns, maybe, you know, some heavy railguns sitting up on these dunes to just fire out on the AAVs coming in. They would have just had to turn back home.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And just due to how the coalition meta has been evolving lately, I would almost very rarely, if ever, consider going as a strikecraft opener. I just don't think it's very safe at all. In fact, I find it like very dangerous because the prevalence of AAV rushing in the current meta is so high that it's just, I don't know. I find it so dangerous to open strikecraft. I'm never really comfortable doing it, playing Knef or Galcian.
Yeah, and that's something that I should have remembered.
Hey,
I was sort of trying different strategies because I don't play very much 2v2, especially not competitively. This cup has been great for getting us into some more competitive 2v2 play because many of the 2v2 games that are played are a little more casual. Just, you know, a few people getting together, not really caring who their teammate is and just getting in a game and playing. But in this case, I hadn't really strategized with Payday very much. We sort of went game by game. And so for this game, we said, yeah, let's go strikecraft. Let's see what we can do. We hadn't considered that Tren and Iain were both coalition factions, one of them being Soban, but still both able to build AAVs. And I hadn't realized that when 2 players build AAVs, that's really just an unstoppable force. And there isn't much you can do other than just rush railguns from the very beginning if you want to defend against that. At least that's my theory.
No, that's absolutely true. Like, you can't. Strikecraft will get shut down. Blast drones will get shut down. Carrier power rushing isn't that effective just because of how tanky AAVs are. You won't be able to get out air in time. So really, the only thing you can do is you have to basically just go railguns like right off the bat, which I don't know. I find that like if I'm to be perfectly honest, I think the AAV rush, just of how easy and how early it is a little bit problematic. It's really, really hard to shut down, but I have seen it done. I've done it myself. It's just you have to assume that they're doing it and go assault railguns. Like I almost always now open assault railguns when I'm going against a coalition faction because they're pretty useful against strikecraft, and as well they will shut down the AAV rush. But that's just my personal thing. I haven't, played enough really to make that a definitive statement. However, that was the end of match 3 from round 1. So we will continue on with this tournament with round 2, I believe, is coming up next. So we'll see the matchups being shuffled, and I'm pretty excited to see what that brings. So once again, I want to give a big shout out to Sinistro for organizing these replays and hosting the tournament, and as well for Majiir Pack 2 for joining me for this cast. It was an absolute pleasure having you, man.
Thank you, as always.
So I'll leave for all the viewers, I'll leave a link to Majiir's channel in the video description. Check him out if you like competitive Deserts of Kharak. You'll find more of it there with some really on-point commentary. So once again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.